Here's a question. What happened to Kanye West? Earlier this week, Kanye was said to have decided to seek medical help on the advice of his doctor and was committed to his psychiatric facility. Two notable incidents occurred before the final breakdown which put him in the hospital. In his initial rant, he told a bunch of concert goers that he didn't vote, but if he did, he would have voted for Trump.
I said something that was kind of politically correct. I told y'all I didn't vote, right? But I didn't tell you. I guess I told you. But if I would have voted, I would have voted on Trump.
In his second rant, he actually seems to show what I would perceive as a glimmer of self-awareness.
In my opinion, now don't go trying to diss Beyonce. She is great. Taylor Swift is great. We are all great people. We are all equal. But sometimes we be playing the politics too much and forgetting who we are. Just to win. Fuck winning. Fuck looking cool. Fuck looking cool. Fuck being cool. Fuck all that, bro.
So I've been thinking about this for the past few days, and I've mentioned organizations such as the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist Movement in the past. Something that someone in the comments section of another video brought up to me recently was, do I think that this system will remain sustainable for much longer before we will be forced to revise our society into something that is not the antithesis of human health? And I think, although there was a political element, or something that someone might argue that there is a political element to much of what was happening in the case of Kanye West, I wanted to address a certain aspect of it that I think a lot of people are either not aware of, or perhaps just don't give much consideration to because of the way our society is oriented around consumption, and this notion that our economy, which is an anti-economy at its core, is normal, when in fact it produces an enormous amount of disparity. Half of the country is impoverished. I've mentioned this in several past videos of mine. 51% of the United States is below the poverty line. Would you call that a success? Is that the success of capitalism? And of course, any critique of capitalism will bring forth accusations of you're a socialist. So like oftentimes critics of Bernie Sanders, and I'm not advocating for socialism here necessarily, but critics of Bernie's would often say to me, would you like to see a nation full of poor people? Because that's what socialism will bring upon us. And of course I say that 51% of the nation is already impoverished, and the middle class is dwindling faster and faster. So this video is not about economics. What I really want to touch upon is the fact that no matter what economic system you advocate for, a key component of any sane economic system to a certain extent needs to be the benefit of all parties involved. All parties involved must take public needs and public health into consideration for any sane economic system moving forward into the future. Here are a few things to consider based on research that has been done over the last 25 years or so, and how it relates to social stratification and this whole Kanye West nervous breakdown collapse thing. So a growing body of research has shown that in developed countries, now this is developed countries, which by every means should be the most stable and healthy, major and minor mental illnesses are 3 times as common in societies where there is a bigger income difference between rich and poor. As far as economics are concerned, don't discount the economic or political fallout of producing a generation of neurotics. So one might argue that much of what we're currently seeing could be the result of a generation saddled with debt and left with a world in much worse shape than what the baby boomer generation received it in. So the greater the disparity, the higher the rate of mental illness. And one would assume this would be limited to the lower classes who are constantly under stress to make ends meet. A man by the name of Robert Sapolsky has done a tremendous amount of research into hierarchies within societies and the amount of stress they produce. So if anybody's, and also Gabor, the work of Gabor Mate, so important, the work of these two individuals. Back to my main point. So you would assume that wealth disparity would create a tremendous amount of mental fracturing among the poor, but actually those who belong to the wealthiest class are not immune. In fact, because of the disparity, there's just as much, in some cases more, incidences of neurosis than among the poor. So many rich people don't want to see or have to deal with poor people, especially those in desperate need, because it generates feelings of guilt. At the end of the day, people are still people, after all, and we came from hunter-gatherer societies. Human psychology developed around these early egalitarian societies that human beings, Homo sapiens, derived from. So we still have that same psychology as our ancestors did. Nobody had gold-plated toilet seats, or yachts, or art that looked like cum stains protected by armed guards. Humans still have the same basic mindset we had when we lived in small tribes of 50 people. So when a rich person today sees a poor person, there is an inner critic which is going to hound them for their lack of generosity. And this is going to produce a tremendous amount of angst. And this is where all these various mental breakdowns derive from. So whether they're conscious of it or not, their minds will generate a tremendous amount of feelings of being unworthy. So this inner conflict, which produces feelings of worry, fear, anxiety, self-doubt, etc., cannot be alleviated through wealth. Although a person's vast wealth obviously can provide a degree of assured feelings, it can provide an illusion of security, the underlying neurosis is going to persist. So producing continuing unhappiness through this stratification. And why do you think that Hollywood is so saturated with self-help gurus and wellness clinics? Are these not the people who have everything? So why would they be so out of whack? I mean, at times, wouldn't it seem that the rich and successful among us they seem even crazier than the average Joe? So that's not a coincidence. And dozens of scientific studies have now shown that accumulating more and more wealth only makes the neurosis worse. The richer the individual, the more they don't even want to think about those in need. Those with the highest incomes tend to give less to charity. Why do you think that is? That's not by accident. Since the materialistic gap is too big to be bridged by rationalizations, super rich people have to become cold-hearted to avoid feeling guilty. This is what you're seeing. And as I alluded to before, it is important to note that, especially in the United States, the richest nation on the face of the planet, income disparity between the rich and the poor is almost equivalent to Great Depression levels. Think about that. So an American is likely to know 3 times as many people with depression or anxiety problems as someone in a nation such as Japan or Germany, where there's less social stratification. This type of thing is only going to get worse and worse and worse. Our society is sick, and we need to do a lot of introspection so we can get to work on a course correction. This can't go on. We need a new system, and I'm not advocating for socialism here, but if you don't know what the Zeitgeist movement is, if you're unfamiliar with the Venus Project, if you're unfamiliar with the work of someone like Peter Diamandis, it would be worthwhile to investigate these ideas. Because the way we've been doing things is not producing the best results for ourselves, and it's not going to produce the best results for future generations. That's obvious. Even when you look at someone like Kanye West, someone who seemingly has it all, and this is supposed to be the most successful, the people in Hollywood, the people on Wall Street, these are held up high because they're supposed to be the most successful individuals in our society, and they're sick. So what does that say about how we measure achievement? We need a new paradigm. We need a new economic paradigm. We need to orient society in a manner so that it is not an anti-society. And that's my thought on the issue. And with that, I'd like to leave you with an insightful clip from Dave Chappelle. And this is an observation that he voiced in the Actors Studio just after Martin Lawrence had a breakdown.
It's how tough he is. So let me ask you this. What is happening in Hollywood that a guy that tough will be on the street waving a gun, screaming, "They are trying to kill me"? Yeah. What's going on? Why is Dave Chappelle going to Africa? Why does Mariah Carey make a $100 million deal and take her clothes off on TRL? A weak person cannot get to sit here and talk to you. Ain't no weak people talking to you. So what is happening in Hollywood? Nobody knows. The worst thing to call somebody is crazy, is dismissive. I don't understand this person, so they're crazy. That's bullshit. These people are not crazy. They're strong people. Maybe the environment is a little sick.